All right, this is Nick from Exploring Audio at Magfest 2016. I'm here with Dan Behrens, a.k.a. Danimal Cannon. How are you enjoying Magfest so far, Dan?
I am having a blast.
Awesome. Well, what I wanted to talk to you about was the song Chronos off of Parallel Processing. Basically, the tightest banger on the album.
It's a little bangy.
Basically, I wanted to first start off by asking you, how did that song begin? Was that song how did that song start out?
So on that album, I actually collaborated with another artist named Zeph, and he sent me a couple sketches of like things he had been working on, like just really basic, and that was one of them. That was one of the songs. He sent me a sketch, and his sound design is really incredible, and that's why I wanted to work with him. And that song in particular, I was like, all right, I can work with this. This will be a banger. Like, this will be fun. And so that one is actually one of our best collaborations because it really kind of mixes both of our styles together. And I've actually stolen a bunch of his tricks now because, you know, that was the actual point of that album.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, on an album with such intense wave channel manipulation, that song in particular is like, to me, the king of the wave channel. Can you tell me a little bit about coming up with some of that stuff and how Zeph inspired some of that stuff too?
Well, I'm gonna have to give Zeph credit. Like, it's mostly his wave channel work, and I've actually stolen a couple patches on future songs. I went back and I was like, all right, let's see what parameters are going on here. And so I really have to give Zeph credit. Like, his sound design on that song is some of the best I've ever heard. He gets like this wah pedal sound out of the wave channel, which sounds incredible, and he'll use it rhythmically. So it'll go from like half notes to like quarters and eighths or whatever. It's really fantastic, and it's actually one of those songs that makes me think of a Game Boy as a completely unique instrument because there's really nothing that sounds like it. You could only make that song on a Game Boy, and it sounds super unique.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. When you are working on the wave channel, I think the wave channel is like the most complicated and deep part of the Game Boy. When you are working on that, do you tend to work more with trial and error, or do you have specific thoughts in your head that you're going to try to do, or do you just like experiment a lot? How does that normally work?
Can it be all of those things?
Yes, it can.
Sometimes I have a really good idea of what I want to do. Sometimes, I just want it to function like a bass instrument that's really just holding it down and letting the pulse channels or my guitar sort of, do the talking. And other times, it's just such a diverse instrument. It's great to have it be up front and have it do something really nasty and unique sounding. And sometimes experimentation, there's some parameters you just sort of mess with them and, oh man, that sounds amazing. And then once you hear that new amazing sound, you're like, oh, this is writing the next part of the song. I'm just going to use that. And I think that's one of my favorite things is that hybrid approach of like, oh, I want to do this, but also there's experimentation.
Right.
And I have enough of a grasp of it now that both are really fun, and I use them all the time.
Yeah, awesome. I find too that you can come up with the craziest wave instrument. You're using the synth screen, you have a table going on, and then you try to throw like a P command on top of it, and it's like just the layering of like 80 different controls.
It's really fun to write music with. It turns out, a Game Boy isn't just this awful, exercise of working with, terrible code, and actually the code is brilliant, but terrible to look at in terms of modern GUIs and stuff like that. Anyways, I don't remember what I was saying, but the wave channel is sweet.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else? I mean, in particular, that song, I would have, like you just said, you really hear both of your guys' styles come out in it, because I would have pegged that song as something maybe that you had started, just because it's so Danimal style. But it's cool to hear that it was such a collaboration.
Well, one of the funny things about that record is, especially later on, we could see our styles starting to rub off on each other. So he would start to send me stuff that sounded kind of like something I would do, and I started to sort of program stuff that more fit into like what he does. And I don't know, it was a great record to just sort of expand our horizons and come up with something really unique. And that track in particular, Chronos, I think that's one of the best embodiments of what we were able to create together.
Cool. And coming up soon, you actually have a new album coming out?
I do. It sounds not as much like Parallel Processing. That album, instead of using 2 Game Boys or just Game Boys, I have guitar on it. And people have been yelling at me. They come to my shows and they see me play guitar solos. And they're like, why isn't there a guitar on the record? I would like a refund. No one actually does that, but I'm expecting them to. And so for this new record, I really kind of explored the combination of the Game Boy and the guitar. And I actually tried to do that a long time ago, and it's surprisingly complicated. You do that, and I bet you've run into some...
I have lower standards than you, I think.
Possibly. Well, we also make different kinds of music.
Right, yeah.
And so I tend to make a lot of like heavy metal influenced music. And in that, the guitar in heavy metal is so overpowering. Like that's the mix right there. And it's usually guitar and drums, and then I guess bass and cymbals are allowed to be in there. But for this record, the Game Boy still has to shine. It has to be this huge lead instrument. And sometimes like I had to leave room for guitar. Right. And that's the biggest thing is I had to essentially make a song that had less going on in that mid-range so that I could, fit a guitar in there. And it really involved a completely different writing process for that record. So,
yeah, guitars.
Yeah. Why would anybody want that?
And what is the album named?
It is called Loon Aria. It's a hybrid word. A portmanteau, I think, is the official term, and it's a lunar aria. An aria is a song for a single voice, and there's more words that go with that definition that I can't pull out of my brain right now. But I have the title track, and it has a vocalist, a single vocalist. I did double track her, and she does harmony, so I cheated on the true aria, but whatever.
Well, this is a lunar aria.
So on the moon, you can actually use 2 voices because that's how that works. Anyways, musical devices were meant to be broken, so that's what I did.
Cool. And that comes out on March 11th?
March 11th, 2016. Are you excited?
I'm incredibly excited. I've been a fan of your music for so many years now, and Parallel Processing is obviously one of my very favorite albums, but is this album going to at all be a little bit more maybe reminiscent of Roots? Because now we're back to solo Dan, or what do you think about that?
It is a little bit more reminiscent of Roots, but I learned a lot of things while making Parallel Processing. I stole Zeph's tricks. Don't tell him I said that. Please don't watch this interview, Zeph. No, and so there's a little bit of that flavor in there. A lot of the Parallel Processing stuff is a little bit more sound design based, and it's a little bit more dance music, and this is more of a rock album. And but every once in a while, you got to bust out that really crazy sounding synthesizer noise that like, what is that? So I have been infected by that record, but it sounds like Roots. I don't know. Roots, I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I was still learning the Game Boy. In fact, I'm still learning the Game Boy, and I learn something new every time I program something.
Yeah, it's just incredible how simple it is. And then, like you said, you can use it for years, and then you come up with some new thing, and it's like, now I'm doing it completely differently.
Well, for me, when I go to shows, and I tend to go to a lot of shows, and I'll see somebody play some crazy banger, and I'll immediately, be like, oh, well, I don't know how to do that. Better go home and practice and figure that out. And I don't know, I constantly get inspired by my peers. Solar Bear dropped a new track today, and I was like, what is this? I gotta make something like that.
Oh my God. He is pretty ridiculous.
He is.
Yeah.
I love Solar Bear. He sucks, but...
Cool. So yeah, Loon Aria, March 11th. Anything else that you want to say?
No.
You too.